taking, and the oath is either by Bible, Quran, or the Holy Book of the Hindus, depending on your religion. Which one do you prefer?
The Bible.
So take the Bible in your right hand, raise it, and recite the oath that the sergeant will show you.
I, Kinyanjui, do swear that the evidence I shall give before this committee on the matters under its consideration shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Thank you. You may take your seat and sign to the oath. This is a committee on appointments. Good. If you have your original documents, you can give to the sergeant to pass on to the clerk to cross-check with what we have in our possession on you. Thank you, Honorable Lee. This is a committee of the National Assembly on appointments. It's chaired by yours truly as Speaker of the National Assembly. I'll invite honorable members to introduce themselves, starting with the Deputy Speaker on my right.
I'm Gladys Boss, member for Uasin Gishu County and also Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly. Welcome.
Kemani Shongwa, MP Kikuyu, Leader of Majority.
Junaid Mohammed, MP Suna East, Leader of Minority.
Kosing David, MP Poko South, this committee.
Nelson Koech, Member of Parliament, Belgood constituency.
Gikaria David, Nakuru Town is constituency. And Honorable Chairman, I just want to declare my interest on the nominee before the committee. He is from Nakuru County and specifically votes in Nakuru Town, his constituency. So he's my constituent. Again, as you had said earlier, that will not hinder me from any prejudice or favorism. So we will do our work as a committee member. Thank you, Chairman.
Naisula Lesuda, MP Samburu West.
Robert Mbui, MP Kadhiani, Deputy Leader of the Minority Party.
Owen Baya, MP Kilifi North and Deputy Majority Leader.
George Gitonga Murugara, Member of Parliament, Tharaka constituency, Tharaka Nithi.
I'm Ferdinand Wanyonyi, Member of Parliament, Kwanza and Trans Nzoia County, member of this committee.
Abdul Rahim Daud, MP for North Imenti, Meru County.
Masemeri, MP Teso South, member of this committee.
Rehab Mukami, County MP Nyeri, member of this committee.
Stephen Mule, MP Matungulu, Machakos County, a member of this committee.
Honorable Speaker, I am leading a team of 23 dedicated officers who are serving this committee today. My name is Samuel Jiroga. I'm a clerk of the National Assembly.
Thank you. Honorable Kinyanjui, as you are aware, you've been nominated by His Excellency the President and placed before this committee to assess your suitability to hold the office to which you have been nominated. So we will ask you questions and it will be your duty to answer them as precisely and concisely as you can. Don't engage into any arguments with any member. Even if the question is provocative, just answer the question. Leave the judgment to us. You also address the committee through the chairman of the committee. Don't have personal engagement with members. Even if it is Honorable Gikaria who accelerated your departure from your last office.
Honorable Speaker, that is that is not true.
It's common knowledge. Gikari, you want to deny what is obvious? It's with a light touch, but you know where the facts lie. So we'll start by inviting you, Honorable Kinyanjui. I also declare, I know Lee very well. We were in Parliament together, and we have been good friends. That notwithstanding, we will ask you every question that is relevant to establish your suitability or otherwise to hold this office. Start by, in 5 minutes or less, telling us your name, your educational background, your professional background, your work experience, any key competences in your life that make you feel and believe you are suitable for the role as Cabinet Secretary in the portfolio to which you have been nominated. Before you start, I invite Honorable Mishimbogo to go on record by introducing herself.
My apology, Honorable Chairman, I was praying. My name is Honorable Mishimboko, MP for Likoni, Mombasa County.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Allow me to take this opportunity first to express my gratitude for the opportunity to serve my country, or to be nominated to serve my country by the President. And I really want to say that I take this as a very solemn moment. We don't always get time to serve our country. So I come here in that context, and also wish to confirm that you have conferred me the title of CBS. I hold no such title. So thank you for that. Quickly going to myself, I want to say I'm a graduate of Kenyatta University, and I studied education, English and literature. I'm therefore a proud graduate of one of our local universities, and I say through my experience in Kenyatta University, I have come to see the value of education, especially education in our universities, that prepared us to meet and conquer the whole world. So I think that's about my study at the university. When I got to work, I have not worked for government for long. I taught briefly and then went to the corporate sector, where I worked in the oil industry before venturing into private business. In the year 2006, I vied in a by-election in Nakuru. I did not succeed, but the following year, which was a general election, I vied, succeeded, and was elected Member of Parliament for Nakuru Town. Then included East and West was one constituency. Further, in the Grand Coalition government, I was appointed the Assistant Minister for Roads, and I worked with the late Kipkalia Kones, and later with Franklin Bett and the PS Michael Kamau, and together we worked very closely with the then President Mwai Kibaki in delivering the roads agenda that remains a huge legacy to date. During my time at the ministry, I attended many postgraduate trainings, including in PPPs, transport management, privatization and outsourcing, procurement, and many other areas relating to the docket that we are working. Mr. Chairman, allow me also to say that during our tenure, we undertook some of the biggest infrastructure projects that are seen to date, one of them being the Thika Road. Second one are the eastern bypasses that we see here today, and the others include the major road network connecting us to the neighboring countries, including Isiolo, Merile, going all the way to connect to Ethiopia. And I think the important part, Mr. Speaker, is that when I worked under the Ministry of Roads, we were actually looking at this docket from an infrastructure point of view. How do we connect with Uganda infrastructure-wise? How do we connect with Tanzania, with Ethiopia, and all these countries, and ensuring that there's smooth flow of goods and that our manufacturers have access to all those big markets, many of which do not have the advantage of manufacturing as we do have. Allow me, Mr. Chairman, to say that after I left Parliament, I was appointed the Chairman of the National Transport and Safety Authority, again within the broader sector of transport, where we undertook serious reforms, not just in safety, but in reforming the public transport sector. Noting that one of the biggest challenges we had then was congestion, especially in the urban areas, including Nairobi, and the need to encourage people to use public transport so that we can reduce the time wasted on the road because of congestion. And I'm happy much of that has borne fruit. The digitization, including the smart driving license, including other measures we brought during that time, remain alive to date, and I'm very proud of our time then. Mr. Chair, allow me also to comment that in the year 2017, I vied for Governor Nakuru, and we succeeded. And between the year 2017 and 2022, we were Governor Nakuru together with many others. I was not alone, including my deputy, Dr. Eric Korir. But I think what is most significant is that we made our contribution, and I'm happy to note that Nakuru was voted best in healthcare in 2 consecutive years. We also had our town, Nakuru, elevated into a city in the year 2021. And in the same year, I was voted the most business-friendly governor in Africa. And we take pride in some of this because they inform why we are also seated here today. Between the year 2022 to date, I retreated to my private business and had the opportunity to experience the country from the other side. And I say that because it is also important that when we discuss public policy, we also discuss it from where the public sees it. And I also had the opportunity to see how red tape affects business, how the cost of energy can hinder growth, and how taxation can impact businesses and hinder growth also. I also had experiences on how pending bills can bring businesses down, can impact on growth, and also how the management or mismanagement of politics can affect business across the country. So, Mr. Speaker, I say that I have sat both in Parliament, I've sat in the executive, I've also been at the county, and I've also sat on the Mwananchi bench, and therefore, coming into this conversation, we will be ready to work from all angles. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll invite the Deputy Speaker to be the first to ask a question.
Okay. Honorable Kinyanjui, I just have 3 related questions. One is that, as you know, in the past 10 years, the manufacturing sector in Kenya has remained stagnant at 11% of our GDP. If approved, what measures will you put in place to promote the growth of the local manufacturing sector? Also, there is the challenge of the influx of substandard counterfeit and contraband products into the local market through various border points, and this has reduced also the market share of locally manufactured goods. Again, I'd like to know the strategies that you'd put in place to curb that. Also, scrap metal industry in Kenya meets a huge demand in both the local and international markets, and it contributes to about 0.6% of Kenya's exports. If approved, what policies will you implement to ensure that this trade grows, but also strike a balance with safeguarding against vandalism? Thank you.
Go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Allow me to start by looking at the question of manufacturing in the lens of the sessional paper number 10 by the then Minister for Commerce, Dr. Gikonyo Kiano, in 1963, and the plan to make Kenya an industrial hub, encourage Africanization, and more importantly, protect our markets from external flooding by the developed and industrialized nations. But, Mr. Chairman, I want to confirm that in spite of that great dream, not much of it has been achieved. It is true that the contribution of manufacturing to GDP is in the range of about 7, which remains low even compared to some of our neighbors within the broader Africa region. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, it will be important for us as we get into this critical office to look at the foundational causes of why manufacturing has remained low. And I want to start by saying the first one, I think, is our mindset. And I say this with the full knowledge that very few of our students will go to school in the hope of owning an industry one day. They can dream of anything else, but industry is not one of those things we have taught our people to imagine or think they would ever want to get into. So therefore, it will be important, first of all, to try and work on the psychology of our people to make them understand that where the money is not in the primary extraction, but in the value addition that we find in industry. Secondly, the issue and the cost of energy remains a big issue. We have the cost of energy being among the fourth most expensive in the whole of Africa, and therefore if you are producing to go and compete with other products from other parts of Africa, leave alone even other parts of the world, then we are already disadvantaged. Yet we know industries are heavy consumers of energy. We need to work closely together with the Ministry of Energy to find ways of reducing the costs. But I think more importantly, Mr. Chair, is to look at the elephant in the room, which is basically energy agreements that were signed a long time ago that continue to put our energy at extremely irrational levels, thereby making manufacturing in Kenya very difficult. We are aware that there are some companies that have moved to other countries where the cost of energy is lower, and therefore I don't think it is a matter that we would want to postpone, because it's very urgent. And most of the young people whom we see out there who are restless, most of them have done courses that would be absorbed in these industries. So as long as the industries are not growing at the level that we would want, then we are likely to continue experiencing this. Then lastly, our trade agreements and other engagements with partners, which means that through the EAC, through other multilateral agreements, sometimes we have ended up getting the last side of the agreement, meaning therefore we don't protect our industries. There's flooding, and that has been a major challenge that has seen most of our industries wiped out. Allow me also to say, closely related to this, is that we have not been able to come to the aid of our factories and industries when they're in problems, and therefore you find that some of them go through foreclosure and others. Yet there are many other situations across the world when companies are facing financial constraints, including GM in the US in the year 2008. The government came and saved them. Today it remains a very big company to date. But we have had some of our bright companies, whenever they fall into trouble, they go into foreclosure, and it becomes very difficult to revive them in future. Therefore, I also want to take this opportunity to ask the House to consider how we can be able to protect our industries, because once they go down, coming up is impossible. And a good example is Kenyatta, which is over 20 years into receivership. Allow me to mention also on the issue of counterfeits. Yes, it is true that a lot of the manufacturers face the serious problem of having other people manufacture using their brands without their knowledge, and therefore diluting the investment of the original investors. I think there is an already existing authority that takes care of this, and I think our work will be to work together with other state agencies, including enforcement, to ensure that it does not continue to affect our industries adversely. Lastly, Mr. Chairman, is the issue of scrap metal and how we can ensure that our exports are supported. I want to say that any country that exports scrap metal should really reconsider its policies. How can you export scrap metal instead of just melting it and making it, iron bars for construction and all that? So the idea of exporting scrap metal is a suicide note for a country that seeks to industrialize itself. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Majority.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And me also note, Honorable Speaker, that I've known the Honorable Kinyanjui for quite some time, since he was a member of Parliament, and he's been a friend. But that will not deter me from vetting him. And CS nominee, I want to know, from where I sit, we see a lot of disharmony, or there being lack of harmonization of what is seen to be government policy in the ministry, especially of industry, and what happens in practice. And because we seem to be having a protectionist policy in the ministry, especially around local manufacturers. And I have in mind the specific case of the steel and cement industries, where policy has been seen to be protecting local manufacturers, those who have invested heavily in the industry. But at the same time, in practice, the ministry also proposes certain other legislative measures that negate the policies that you espouse. What do you intend to do, should you be approved, to harmonize both policy and legislation? And I say that because specifically on cement and steel. For instance, we want to encourage the growth of local industry in the steel sector with heavy investments by particular players in the country. But legislation then comes to Parliament that in a way is also killing small industrialists. And you find that you are protecting the very big industrial setups, but also killing cottage industries. Look at the people who are smelting the scrap metal you're talking about, and those who are processing iron ore to steel. Look at those who are manufacturing mabati, iron sheets, and wire rods. And the legislation around it and what the ministry espouses as government policy. I therefore just want to hear what your views are on a protectionist policy in government of industry vis-a-vis the encouragement of young and nascent cottage industries in the country. Because big industries, yes, create jobs, but also the cottage industries probably create much more jobs than those big, very big mega industries. Just your views on that, CS nominee, and how you will harmonize both policy and legislation.
Junet, Lee will take several so that you can answer them together. Junet, you will skip posing.
Thank you, Chairman. Honorable Chairman, there's something notable about nominees from Nakuru which I want to bring to the attention of the nominee. We have vetted 3 people from, this is the 3rd person from Nakuru, Honorable Chairman. We are vetting in less than 2 years, or 2 years exactly. And at the moment we vet somebody, and I want Honorable Kinyanjui to know this, when we finish vetting that person, we approve. Then 1 month down the line, if you ask who is the minister for ICT, nobody remembered her. I'm telling you. Nobody even remembered whether there was a minister of ICT. Then the first man who went to lands, there was a problem. So, Honorable Kinyanjui, are you going to be part of the same? Was that a fate? But my question is, Honorable Kinyanjui, this idea of economic zones has been criticized by some critics and given a proposal which I want to know what is your thinking about it. They are saying, rather than having those economic zones in counties, that you as a minister now coming for industrialization, that you don't focus on that. What you do, you focus on economic niche of counties. Fund some budget for specific counties and develop that economic niche. And they give examples, like for example in Turkana, there's oil. So if there was money, you develop that economic niche for Turkana, we'll develop a country from that point, and it will actually contribute to our economy. West Pokot is mining. I can assure you that. There's a lot of minerals in West Pokot. So rather than doing these economic zones, why don't you find money and develop that economic niche? Tourism, Narok, and then also maize in, for example, Kitale. What do you think about people who think like that, rather than just having these white elephants, in my view, called economic zones without actual economy? Thank you, Chairman.
Honorable Lee, as a student of literature, you've always expressed that literature on your online platform, and most of it actually fairly has been in the last few months has been very critical on this administration. Number two, your party Ubuntu had its manifesto. Now you're joining, assuming this committee approves you, you will be joining the Kenya Kwanza government, which has also its manifesto. How do you want to use, how do you think you will work with this administration, considering that you've been extremely critical of this administration and its policies, and now you have to sit with the same team that you've criticized and used words against? Thank you.
Chairman, I don't have any question.
Okay.
I just want to assure Posing that the fears of Nakuru now will be sorted. I hope that the positive development...
Lee, you can proceed to answer questions. Posing is not being vetted here.
So thank you, Chair. Allow me to start with the Honorable Koech and to say that I have used my knowledge sometimes to be critical of the administration, but I also want to correct. There's a difference between being critical of policies and being critical of a government. If, for example, we say pending bills are affecting businesses, that is not an affront on a government. It is a plea from the business community to try and ease cash flows so that businesses don't fail. If we say taxation beyond a certain point can stifle growth, that is not criticism. It is actually positive criticism, so that if you take it, then everybody is a winner, from the government to the citizens and all that. And I think it's really important for us to also embrace that even when you're in office, including myself, it is not possible that I'm the only one with ideas. There'll be people from out there who will think I can do something better, and the right thing is to give them that avenue, and possibly if they have better ideas than myself, also to listen to them. And I think personally I consider that as my role as a patriotic citizen. Whenever I see something that I think is not right, to raise it, and possibly hope that the policy makers, whether in parliament or in the executive, can also take it up. With respect to a political party, it is true I have formally resigned from Ubuntu, but my heart is also very connected to the Ubuntu philosophy, which simply talks about I am because you are. And therefore also in government, whatever policies we make must not just be about me, myself, and I. There is a bigger community beyond yourself. And I think really this is what we need to really get out there. When you see poverty out there, is not something we can ignore. And I think the opportunity to work in government also means my thoughts, I will share them to colleagues through parliament, also to the president, and give the best advice that I consider necessary for the country. The Honorable Kosing, he has said that nominations from Nakuru, I am not aware. I still remember those two gentlemen. I'm not the appointing authority, and therefore would hate to discuss them in their absence.
Chairman, was it gentlemen?
A gentleman and a lady. You don't know your citizens in your former jurisdiction.
Gentleman and lady.
Yes.
And I think maybe also what is important is that even when a new person like myself comes, it's not a very good tradition to belittle anybody else who's been there before you. I think acknowledge whatever contribution they've made, whether big or small.
Actually, it was just a preamble to a question. Don't belabor that. Answer the
well said.
The relevant
With respect
question.
To the economic zones, I think every county has a story. If you go to Pokot, you know, I mean, the situation will be very different from Mombasa. If you go to Makwiny compared to Nakuru, therefore to make a generic template for all the counties may not be right. And I think therefore some of the considerations we need to make is to look at the economic opportunities existing at every place and ensuring that the economic zones we are creating are responsive to the needs of that particular place. For example, in the pastoralist areas, the issue of beef and cattle and lamb is really in huge demand, especially in the Middle East. So we don't need to go competing with other places that could do horticulture. So how can we empower areas like Isiolo and some of those places, Kajiado, Samburu, and the other places, so that they become our best practice examples when it comes to bee farming and these other things. So I think it is true that there's a need to rationalize, and I think more importantly also is to, some of these counties are very close to each other. So sometimes to have sufficient raw materials to run all these economic zones may be a challenge in future. Therefore, the need to rationalize and also ensure that we prepare the public. The issue of it turning out to be white elephant is not particularly new in Kenya, where government invests millions and millions of shillings, and I've seen it even when I was in infrastructure. We are told at a certain point there are very many accidents. We go and budget for a footbridge, and nobody ever uses that footbridge, in spite of all the money being pumped there. So there is a need for us to educate the public, in this case, the investors, so that they know what is coming up, where there are challenges of funding. We can look for linkages with banks, including banks that are funded by government, to ensure that there's a close-knit loop. And I think that should be going on now, so that by the time these special economic zones are complete, then you have uptick. And I also want to say that sometimes you have these special economic zones, they are here, but the investments by the local, the indigenous Kenyans, has remained low. So we want to see locals also take advantage of these existing facilities. And lastly, to also confirm that in the past, we have had some of these allocations to companies or persons who are not serious to take up these opportunities. And therefore, they are purely there for speculation. Maybe it's an area within the allocation team that we must make sure that those who are given the opportunity indeed are ready to hit the road running. Lastly, the majority leader, the Honorable Ishongwa, talked about disharmony in government policy. And I don't think this is a light matter, because on one hand, we've been trying to discourage imports. And I want to give the example of the import duty that had been slapped of about 1.5% on luxurious goods, some of those things that we didn't require. But it was removed. So on one side, we say we are protecting, but when you go to our supermarkets, 80% of the things come from outside, including toothpicks. So that is not consistent with a nation that says they want to industrialize. So I think there's a need both for government, the legislation, and also the national intelligence, because part of this legislation we pass has very serious impact on the nation's economic outlook. We are talking of a balance of payment deficit that is growing by the year. So for us to be able to overcome this, it will be extremely important that we harmonize our approach and ensure that everybody understands the implication of every single policy that we put and what it means to the larger national interest. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Sorry. I forgot to mention on cement, which I think is also a big issue. The President has pronounced himself on the issue of affordable housing, and it is obvious that affordable housing cannot be restricted only to the government projects. It also means that if I want to build myself a house, it is within the affordable agenda platform. But the cost of cement and steel has gone up by approximately around 30% in the last 2 years. And I think that can be attributed to some of the monopolistic regulations that were brought during the same period. And therefore, once vetted and finally approved, our first duty will be to try and get up a team to interrogate the impact of some of these policies and whether they are for the benefit of the country or they are reversal to the gains that we already had. The issue of cartels within the industry is also very important, and again there has been mention of quality, and therefore KEBS and other regulatory agencies will be empowered to ensure that indeed we live up to our duty. Thank you.
Honorable Speaker, if you allow me, just one follow-up question in relation to that, the same question I'd asked. Because CS nominee, what I would really want to hear, 20 years ago, the Kenyan state was the leader in manufacturing in the region. As of 2023, statistics are showing us that Uganda has now overtaken Kenya. The contribution to our GDP of manufacturing in Uganda is, as of 2023, was at 15.65%, while Kenyans has stagnated at about 7.6% as of 2023. And 20 years ago, Ugandans, Tanzanians, Burundians, Rwandese, all the way to Congo, people are importing things from Kenya. What is it that you intend to do as a Minister for Trade and Industry to get us back to where we were at least 20 years ago, if not anything else? Because, and I agree with you, it is these protectionist policies that in a way are negating those gains. If you go to Uganda, it's not very big mega industries that are growing that contribution of manufacturing to GDP. It's small industries. But those are the small industries we are killing in Kenya. What will you specifically do to ensure that as you harmonize policies and legislation, you also encourage small cottage industries to grow in the country and take us back to that position where we were the leader in the region? Thank you.
Thank you. Just to build on to what majority leader said, nominee is not just about aligning Kenya's trade and industrial policies to the legislation. It's also about aligning all that to sustainable development goals, because that is what will guarantee that we continue to industrialize, that these industries continue to thrive and grow and expand. So those specific initiatives or plans or action plans that we intend to undertake, I think that's what we want to hear from you.
And maybe to guide you, CS nominee, for instance, we are signatories, and I see you are a consultant with the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. And having been a consultant, I don't know whether you still continue working as a consultant, but this African Continental Free Trade Agreement allows free access to markets of countries that have are signatories to this agreement, from Southern Africa, East and Central Africa. But then again, locally, we are signatories to that agreement, but then we have policies again that are negating the provisions of that agreement in terms of restricting the free entry of raw materials especially. And I have a case in mind of those two industries that I mentioned, clinker in cement and billets, steel billets. Because we pretend to be manufacturing those billets here and producing our own clinker, yet we are importing coal, and therefore probably the inputs that we need for production of that clinker becomes very expensive. And that's how you find that cement, the prices are almost 1.5 times as what they ought to be. And therefore, I don't know what you will do, but really it is something that needs someone who will be very bold to confront all the players and be able to have a very balanced program of how you balance those trade agreements, the growth of our cottage industries, and protection of big industry.
Lee will take the Deputy Speaker.
Yes, mine is brief, just to as a follow-up question. The cost of clinker has significantly increased because there's been a big excise duty loaded onto imported clinker. So you've alluded to the cost of cement, and that is something that's been done in the last few years. So what are you going to do? Because the only way to bring down the cost of cement is not to load excessive excise duty on imported clinker. Because the clinker, we can't produce all the clinker in Kenya. I think 85% of the cement component is clinker. What are you going to do about it? Because that's the biggest challenge facing the building industry, and that's squarely in the hands of your ministry that you're nominated for.
Thank you, Daud.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, to the nominee, he's been a former governor of Nakuru, and myself, I am the patron for street families in Meru for the last 20 years. Can the nominee confirm, during his tenure as the governor for Nakuru, he picked up all the street families, street boys and girls, put them in a truck and went and threw them in a forest. That's an allegation which he would need to confirm. Secondly, I would want to ask the nominee, because he's going to, the manufacturing sector has remained stagnant for many years. It contributes 11% of the GDP. What measures would you take to promote the local manufacturing industry, because they are the backbone of this of country, in the sense that they can contribute more than what they have. The last one is domestic investors in the recent past have not given prominence as opposed to foreign investors, because foreign investors come, they get many incentives, tax incentives and other incentives, which are not available to our domestic investors. If you do get approved, how are you going to assist our domestic investors gain a foothold, because they do not have a foothold in this trade in the country? Thank you, Chair.
Can you answer those?
Thank you, Chair. I wish to start with the Honorable Majority
as
Leader.
Chairman, not Chair.
Thank you. With respect
I'm sitting on a chair, but I'm the chairman.
It's been long. I stand corrected.
Go ahead.
I wanted to respond the issue of the contribution of industry to GDP has declined. But the truth also is that from independence to date, our economy has diversified. There are many things that were not there. For example, Kenya is among the top in geothermal in the world. Actually, in Africa, we are a case study. Sometimes when you're looking at industries, we don't see that as an industry. If you look at the flower export business, that's a whole industry unto itself. We are probably the fourth and the best in the whole of Africa. So sometimes when you're defining industry, we are defining it from the way we knew it then. But industry is very dynamic. Even the M-Pesa platform, it in itself is a whole industry, financial industry, that has completely reconfigured our economy. So I think as we move forward, and the banking industry, Kenya is not just an economy to itself. I mean, all these regional countries look up to Kenya. So I think sometimes when you say that our contribution has gone lower, it sometimes is taken to mean like we are stagnating. It is not entirely true. Actually, we are diversifying.
The members are talking about the prism of manufacturing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm also calling upon us to see manufacturing in the broader context.
Yeah, actually, I would like to comment about the manufacturing, and I want to echo what the Emir has said. Personally, I was doing manufacturing industry area. I was doing manufacturing of vehicles, and we had to close down. And if you go to industrial area today, you'll find that all the godowns are closed down. So I think it's good to accept that there's a problem, and then we sit down, we involve all the stakeholders, and then we see what we can do so that we can now open those industries.
Go on. That's a personal testimony.
Thank you, and I appreciate. Yes. So I think the point is, do we have a problem with the growth of industry? I said where we started in the year 1963 and the session of paper, and where we ought to be today, there is a clear challenge. The issue is how we can unlock that challenge. One of them, I said, was the cost of energy. The other issue is also getting into agreements that allow flooding of goods into the country, thereby disadvantaging our local people. The issue of taxation sometimes, without looking at the broader impact of that on the industry, becomes another bigger problem. I also wish to cite the issue of financing. If anybody wants to start an industry today and you go to a normal commercial bank, the period they give you is normally not more than 10 years. At an interest rate of 18%, you cannot survive. Again, we do not have banks that are aligned to industry, ones that appreciate the whole value chain of industry that can help our local manufacturers to to work together. And therefore, I invite the members as we try and reconfigure how we can move from here forward and encouraging local investors, those who are there to see how they can grow, and I think also more importantly, encouraging the younger ones. The majority leader also talked about the cottage industries. I think sometimes we over-focus on the big bulk industries. But the truth is, if you go to every village, the potential to have small industries that can employ 10, 20 people, get the raw materials from the village becomes a big issue, partly because of employment in the rural areas. And you do not want a situation where everybody has to leave the rural areas to come to town to find labor. So we'll also try and look at how we can be able to encourage cottage industries all the way down into the rural spaces. Then on the issue of sustainable industrial growth, I think it's also very important that we don't just seek to have industries that will come create jobs for 1, 2, 3 years, and then from there they are gone. And I think looking at Kenya's position with respect to sustainability, especially on energy, we have a big step that we've already made. But I think there are critical decisions that need to be made with respect to energy that would help us to overcome. The Deputy Speaker has mentioned the issue of clinker and companies that have now to import clinker at a higher level, which means some of them are actually on the verge of closing. I think sometimes when some of this legislation comes, it would be wise to give the industry time, in which case you say within the next 3 years, everybody should invest in clinker mining. So that if you're a local company and you know between now and then the duty will import duty will continuously go up by 5% or 10%, then it means you have to look for alternatives, and government can give them time. But some of these drastic decisions will send our local companies to the gallows. And if you look at the exports to our neighboring countries, without mentioning, cement is one of the big commodities that we are exporting, including steel. So when you come and also extinguish our companies here, we are also shooting ourselves within the regional export market. The Honorable Dawood has mentioned street children were rounded, do not taken somewhere. I think it is good to say that even if they are street children...
It was alleged.
Alleged.
You remember, Lee?
Yes, it was.
That in an attempt to make Nakuru attractive and make it a city, you picked street children, some street families, put them on the trucks, and went and dumped them in Embobut forest. That was it. I'm saying, let me finish. Because you remember this matter came up in the Senate?
Yes.
And Embobut forest was said to be infested with hyenas and other dangerous wild animals, and some of those children were never found.
Mr. Speaker, it is extremely wrong.
I have used the word very advisedly, alleged.
I also have many allegations about everybody else. So if it's about allegations, I think we can also come up with allegations. But
I advise you not to lose your cool. Just answer questions.
It's about my integrity. We also have allegations, if it's about allegations.
Just answer questions the way they're asked. That's what Dawood asked. And I was making it clear to you because you remember this matter was in the House of Senate for quite some time. So go ahead and answer. If it is not true, even no is an answer.
Even me, I said alleged. I didn't say he has done it.
If you lose your cool, you will be unable to answer the next questions.
I have faced worse situations, but I just wanted to say I have my conscience, right? I can never do that. And the unfortunate thing, including at the Senate is politicians who are there. And the people who are sponsoring it today, you know, I think let's also be fair. You can't call a governor to come and answer to allegations put by their opponent who have intentions to go to an elective position, and then use that allegation later against him. If there are people, this country has the best intelligence in the region. We have never said even one name. You know, so I think let us also respect the institutions we work for. And I would say for Kenya and for posterity, the opportunity to serve in these institutions should not be personalized for gain. Because I was there, Mr. Speaker, you know, throughout that period. How come only those people are known by politicians? Which family has ever come out? So I think it's good to be fair and also respect the positions we have. So in short, Bwana Dawood, that is an act of fiction.
Bwana Chairman, I don't have any interest in Nakuru. So I'm not a politician from Nakuru. It is alleged, that's what I said, we wanted a clarification. Governor should not feel offended. Should not
Don't
feel
apologize. Lee, you know, an opportunity like this is very good for you to clear some of those things, not to feel slighted, because nobody is slighting you. You are being asked questions in good faith.
Well taken, Speaker.
Yes, Ferdinand?
He has not finished. No, he has finished.
Mr. Speaker, there was a secondary question.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
There was a secondary question
from Dawood.
From Dawood. With respect to local investors feeling slighted, and sometimes when you talk about investment, we are largely perceived to be talking about foreign investors. And I think I want to identify with that. There was a situation where some local investors were looking for an appointment with an office, a big office in government, in the county governments, and they kept on looking for that appointment for 6 months, until one day they changed and said they are from another country. They got the appointment the following day. So I think we must agree, the first investors must be you and I, the people who live here in Kenya. And even if the foreigners are to come here, they will make a call to those who are already here. So good referrals mean everything. So Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, I want to agree with Dawood that a lot must be done to encourage local investment. And maybe while still on the issue of local investment, allow me to say that there's a marked difference between the attitude of Kenyans about Kenya and the attitude of foreigners about Kenya. And I think this speaks a lot to what he's saying. If you look at the investments that have happened in the country in the last 3-4 years, from GTC here in Nairobi to other major foreign direct investments coming here, it is huge, and it is a testament of the confidence in largely the country and the region, for that matter. But sometimes Kenyans are also caught up in a web of negativity. So foreigners will see what we can't see. So we need to come up together. The jobs that are being created are for us. And if the owners of the country think different from foreigners, then before long they will come and invest everything and we'll have nowhere to go because of our attitude. So one of the areas I wish to engage in, further to what the Honorable Dawood has said, is to also engage in the attitudes. And maybe also to request Kenyans, when you're looking at your country, don't look at it in the lenses of your politicians. This is your country. You can change your MP, you can change your MCA.
Point of order, Honorable Chairman. Honorable Chairman, this word of politicians has been repeated severally. And for us, we are leaders and we are also politicians. So does it mean that if somebody is a politician, cannot give any views or ask questions, and whether he does it, it is wrong or it is witch hunting? We need some elaboration on that.
Lee, proceed on the basis that a politician is not necessarily an irrational person. Irrational people are found everywhere, even out, and you are a politician too.
Yeah.
We were with you in the house. You became governor. Take it in that stride. That avoid unhelpful mentioning of politician. Just answer questions.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I can withdraw the term politician, but I meant that, you know, Kenya, if everybody out there sees the good of Kenya and the best of Kenya, let me not allow myself, if somebody has a different view, to change me. I think that's all I'm trying to say. And this is our country.
Ferdinand?
Yeah, I'm enjoying the presentation. Now,
then give it to Morgana so that you continue enjoying.
No, let me get to specifically what I want him to answer. I think this challenge facing our Kenya's export. Sometimes back, and I was a regional sales and marketing manager of those 13 countries. You would go to Middle East and had milk from Kenya. Today you go to Middle East, there's no milk at all. From Kenya, you'd rather have it, you find it from Uganda and other places. Secondly, there was also a program where you had this pachuma, stock keeping, the animals are being kept in pachuma grounds for export, trade, for export to Middle East, and I think to islands like Seychelles, Mauritius, and even Madagascar. I don't know what programs you're going to have to revive this, because it's a part of the trade that we had in the region. And I can tell you there was a lot of eagerness, because I went around to those places, in importing, or rather exportation of livestock from Kenya. And Pachuma ground is still, in the coast is still actually there. And if you work to the Ministry of Agriculture, you do a lot of exportation from there. What programs would you have? What would you do to be able to revive this? Thank you.
George Murugara, you'll pass. Owen Bayer.
A quick question, Honorable Speaker, to the nominee. There is information that many factories or manufacturers are leaving the country. Okay, a lot of information now is that. Why do you think they are leaving the country? And what would be your plan to retain them in the country so that we can increase opportunities for young people, create more jobs, and also increase our GDP? The second one, KEBS, Kenya Bureau of Standards, is squarely in trade. There's also another organization called Anti-Counterfeit Authority also there. Why do we have issues of products that come into the country, still counterfeit, still fakes, and still substandard goods that are denting Kenya's image? Thank you.
Yes, Robert.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I agree with some of my colleagues, or a number of my colleagues, that many companies have closed down and moved their manufacturing out of the country. And I'm happy because I've heard you, enumerate some of the reasons why. One of them, which I want to add, is obviously the harsh business environment caused by the harsh taxation regime, and sometimes even the unpredictability of our tax policy. Maybe those are some of the things you'd like to look at. But I want to go to that issue you've just been talking about of a politician. You are a politician, so are we, all of us here. And politicians many times focus on the next election. I'm aware you are governor of Nakuru, and you didn't complete the 2 terms. So there is a possibility you might be interested in that seat again. Now, can you give Kenyans an assurance that as CS, you will not spend your time in Nakuru County campaigning for 2027 at the expense of serving Kenyans?
Mule.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the nominee, Honorable Lee. Kenya recently ratified the EU-Kenya Economic Partnership Agreement, which seeks to create and enhance market access to Kenyans' exports to European Union. I want to hear from you, what will you leverage on this agreement so that we can protect the local markets and also increase our exports to increase our revenues from the European Union. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, Kenya is also in bilateral agreements with major partners like US, whereby the United States, through AGOA, is coming to collapse, actually, to be precise, September this year. And you know, the relationship between Kenya trade and the US is quite massive. As a minister, coming, if approved, to come to this space, what will you tell Kenyans on their face who have been benefiting from business between US and Kenya, and what should we expect from it? Lastly, but not least, Mr. Speaker, is a question from public, whereby when you are the governor for Nakuru, we had the tragedy of Solai Dam. And it really exposed, and we lost Kenyans on that. And a report was done, and a criminal negligence on duty by officers in Nakuru County was placed on them, as you are the governor there. What measures did you do? What response can you tell Kenyans? Are you going to be responsible with our trade and it gets to the same strategies? in this country. It is unfortunate, but what measures did you take to make sure that people were brought to book, and at least the county government, did they compensate those people? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mukami, we'll take some more.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I would like to ask our nominee the strategies he is intending to employ to boost the businesses of small-scale traders. Honorable Speaker, if you go to Kirinyaga Road, Nyamakima, majority of the small traders have closed down. I would really like to know, I would really like to hear from him what he's going to do so that we can bring those young people back to their businesses. The other question, it's in your view, what are the challenges that negatively affect the growth of exports, and what should be done to improve the visibility of Kenyan export in international market? Thank you.
Yes, Lee, you can answer those.
Thank you, Chairman. Allow me to start with the last question by the Honorable Member of Parliament for Nyeri. The issue of small-scale business people, I think, is a huge concern, both in Nyamakema and across all our urban areas. And I think, as I mentioned there earlier, the issue of cash squeeze, where a lot of suppliers have not been paid by government, affects the cash in circulation. And because most of them sell consumables or those things you buy on the go, then it means when people do not have money, then that affects. So one of the areas I hope to be working together with the cabinet and the cabinet together with the CS for finance is to be the champion for paying all suppliers in government. If that money was to hit the accounts of the suppliers, there will be an immediate party in all these places we are talking about. People who are about to face foreclosure will be saved. So, and when the money is in circulation, there's more trade, there's more tax, everybody benefits. So I think we need to agree that, again, the other issue is for banks, because it is very lucrative to put their money in treasury bills and treasury bonds. They don't want to lend to the small people. So again, there's no money in circulation. So let's agree that the small business people are suffering from the cash squeeze that is currently there. And everything must be done, even also by this House, to help us unlock that challenge so that we can give hope. On the issue of funding, I would strongly recommend that we need to find a sustainable way of funding our small businesses, although it is also not right to call them small. People tend to live up to the titles they are given. So I think we need to find a better way of calling them, because it's like confining them to the smallness in which they are. But in short, government must come up with a way, or even if it means the commercial banks must set aside a certain percentage of their money for a certain category of industries and so on, that can help us avail cash flow to the businesses. And the Honourable Member has also asked about growth of export and the hindrance. I think our first biggest export is tea, and I think we've been doing fairly well in spite of the current challenges. But more importantly, also in the area of horticulture and flowers. And I think the biggest challenge you're having there is the availability of air freight, because most of these fresh produce would require to go by air to Europe, to the Middle East and other places. So the constraints within the national carrier and other cargo airlines from Nairobi to all these destinations means that we cannot be able to expand that area. And therefore, I will be seeking to work with the Minister, the CS for Transport, to see how we can expand our cargo handling capacity, because that's an area that can grow within a very short time. Mr. Chair, allow me also to mention on the issue of the European Union Economic Partnership. I think one of our biggest destinations is actually the Netherlands, where we take our flowers and to the UK for vegetables and others. And again, the issue of there being good agreements that protect us, and secondly, the air freight, the cargo, that will help us to unlock. And also maybe giving specific funding to these sectors so that we can increase. We have a lot of land, we have many people who are willing to invest, but because of the heavy capital required, some sometimes it has not been very easy for many to venture in. On AGOA, we are at the final end of the AGOA agreement, and once it collapses, many of the industries, including the textile industries, that heavily rely on the AGOA would be at risk. We are hoping to be able to conclude once there's a change of government, but there's talk of an extension of 1 year as we negotiate the next agreement. But I think the bigger request, Mr. Chairman, would be when these negotiations are happening, they have very huge implications, even 10, 20, 30 years from now. Maybe our teams need to be the best sharpshooters you could ever think of, because those small little commas mean a lot. And when a small country like Kenya is negotiating with the US, which is of 1,000 times its economy, we need to also be careful, because if we open all the doors, our industries are all going to shut. So I think there's a need to have a very strategic team to ensure that these negotiations are done and that national interests prevail at all stages. There was also the question of the Salai Dam and whether there was criminal negligence. Allow me, Mr. Chair, to say that indeed there was a tragedy in Nakuru. That was barely 2 months after I got into office. I got into office around, I don't remember this 2 months, but it was a very short period of time. There's nothing much I would have done. I had barely settled, and this tragedy now comes. But out of that tragedy, a lot we have learned, including a disaster mitigation strategy for the county. Nakuru is home to much of the export we are talking about. So there are very many dams all over Nakuru. And whenever it rains, and maybe there's excess rain, the issue of monitoring of water levels and also warning signals, early warning signals to families down would be there. The issue of insurance also is important, so that whenever there is a financial loss, we can also help those families. But Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, allow me to say also this matter went to court, and they settled out of court on their own volition between the victims and the owner, and for now they are happily working together, and the farm employs over 1,000 people. Without that farm, that whole community would not survive. So they have a good working engagement, but the safety precautions must be upheld at all times.
Was the dam reconstructed?
Yes, it was reconstructed, Mr. Chairman, under the supervision of NEMA and other regulatory agencies, both from the county and the national government.
Mr. Speaker, if you allow me, just a follow-up question on what is said, that we are doing very well on export, especially tea. We want to hear him as if he's approved as a trade minister. There's been challenging of our export for tea lying in the port of Mombasa. What probably, if you have any recollection or you have been briefed, you'll do better and different than what has been done to make sure that the tea farmers in this country cannot continue waiting for their tea to be sold to get the benefit of the sale without any further delay, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wish to say that I do not have the full information regarding the current state of
you
the
actually
stock.
said tea exports are good, but there are challenges.
Yes.
Yes.
So it is our best export for now, but it is experiencing challenges. But I want to confirm that our best run crop in Kenya is actually tea. The farmers can deliver their tea, go home, get their money at the end of the month, and get a bonus. So the challenge we are having right now, I think, will be sorted, and I want to say that will be my first agenda. But beyond that, even though Kenya is a key producer of tea, if you go to the Western world and say you want Kenyan tea, you won't find it anywhere. So it is blended and lost in the world flavors. Yet it is the best. So that which we are best for, nobody can go to the capitals of the world and say, I want Kenyan tea. So again, it's a challenge to us. I mean, today it is possible for me to open a shop in New York, another person to open in Amsterdam. We create this network so that we don't over-rely on the auction in Mombasa. Over-reliance on only one source of selling will create challenges in future. So we need to look for multiple options of selling, including direct sales in UAE and many other places. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No, you've not answered about milk export Middle East. Oh, you are silly.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, we have talked about, the Honorable Robert talked about companies closing and what we need to do. I think you've already mentioned the issue of cost of energy, but the President, His Excellency President William Ruto has already initiated a process to try and understand on a case by case these companies that may be going out, what is the issue, is it something we can be able to solve? And I want to assure this House that as soon as I get the opportunity, I will sit, and even if it means looking for some of them, those who have not completely exited, to see how we can reverse that. But I'm also troubled because it is also true, in recent years we've had local companies that have also closed, including Mobius, our vehicle manufacturer that would have given us pride and nationalism as we venture out there. So I want to assure this committee, I've already sent word to that company because Kenyans hold this very dear to themselves, and we would want to see some of those things as much as possible, how we can be able to work with them. The unpredictable taxation and policies by government. Again, there is a thinking that every year we have a finance bill, it changes excise duty on something, import duty on another, yet this is a company that just came to set in Kenya, has a lifespan of about 10 years before you can return your money, but you cannot do your projections on profitability because it depends on factors way beyond yourself. So the current thinking is to try and come with a tax regime for a minimum of maybe 5 years, so that as you come to invest here, if you are in livestock, if you are in food processing, you can know for the next 5 years, this is what I expect. And stability in the tax regime. And I think this will be a very important card because most of the investors will be citing this as a challenge in terms of, because they have obligations with the banks, but you have no idea what kind of money you will make because it's not entirely in your space. The Honorable Robert also asked me whether I will be returning to Nakuru. I want to confirm that Nakuru is my home and I will always be there. Because if I want to promote Kenya, unless we annex Nakuru, you know, it's part of here and there's a huge industrial base. And I am here also courtesy of the people of Nakuru. If they had not elected me, nobody would have known me. So I would be the last person to say here that among the many goodies I have for Kenya, Nakuru will not be there. But I'll also cooperate with the leaders who are there.
That was not the question. The question was, you served one term as governor.
So you have about
your eyes could be on another term. Are you going to spend government time as a CS rotating around Nakuru, trying to get a re-election for a second term, or you'll go around serving Kenyans as expected of a CS? I think, Robert, that was your question. Yes.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think for the last 2.5 years, I have given my support to the county in way of prayer. And
actually, it's good to acknowledge that there's a member of the public who has sent in exactly the same question. So just go ahead and answer.
Yes. So I've said I support my county and I would want it to prosper. The choice of what would happen in 2.5 years, including for all the members who are here, I'm not too sure you have the answers yourself. So I think these answers will come as we move forward, and I will be well advised by including the appointing office, including the people of Nakuru, but I think it would be suicidal for any person, including yourself, Mr. Chairman, to say bye to the people of Bungoma. You'll never want to see them again. It is for them that you're here.
Yes.
Point of order, Speaker.
Yes, proceed.
I think the Honorable Lee would have just said, I'm not going to spend government money in running my politics in Nakuru. That's all. Whatever happens in 27 exactly, nobody knows. But you cannot spend government money, Minister, to run your politics in Nakuru. That's what Kenyans were concerned.
Oh.
Thank you, Speaker.
Okay. I'm well guided. I have no intention of that nature.
Chairman, I've not asked my questions.
You did.
What I did was just a follow-up question to it was an intervention, Honorable Chairman. I will go straight.
He has not finished. He has not answered Owen Bayer's question, and Ferdinand.
We have not finished.
Yes.
I was going up.
So,
okay.
Speed it up.
The point is that we will not spend inordinate part of our time doing local politicking, but we will benefit Nakuru as much as any other part of this country, and we will forever be grateful to the people of that place. The Honorable Baye, the issue of people leaving the country, I think much as it is true that there are some people or some companies that have left the country, I would always want to see, is a door, there'll be always somebody coming and another one going. If we over focus and create a perception, people are leaving Kenya, and the people who are saying that are Kenyans, we are also participating in creating a negative attitude about our country. So we need to say, 2 came, the 3 went. GTC was not here the other day. All these big Chinese companies that have come, and many other buy locals that have started. So I will not sit on the side of saying companies are leaving Kenya. I will say some are leaving, others are coming. We have many pharmaceutical companies, including from the US, that are setting up at Tattoo City. Many others are coming towards our economic zones that we have already set aside. So I would not say that's not an entirely correct statement, but you have tended to focus on the exit while giving a blind eye to those who are busy coming to bring money and bring investment to our country. Then, so the issue is also to come up with a retention mechanism, and we plan to make Ken Invest, which is the main agency responsible for attracting investment, to equip them so that you have a one-stop shop when you come, because you don't want to come and you're told go to Kiambu County, the next day you're told go to Nema, the other day you're told go to this agency. So we should have officers who can hold this new investor. Remember, they don't even know the country until maybe 1 year, and then you can file a report. If they have an issue, we can look into it. But while still saying this, it would be important to say the issue of governance remain a key issue. If a big company quoted in their country come here, and the first thing there's demand for some facilitation of sort, many people don't understand that language. So we need to help our people to channel our interest into partnerships. If a big company has come, we have land, you can partner with this cooperative, and together we can move forward. So the thing is, how do we structure investments so that we do not end up having a tag that can adversely affect our investments?
Chairman, I just want to put a rider on that question, because I see one of the reasons why we lose some foreign investors. It is because some of them, they've been asking about having what we call tax holidays, but there has been a lot of taxation on them. So maybe how do you balance in ensuring that we have these tax holidays and at the same time we still collect revenue? I think this is one of the areas why we lose some foreign investors, and there must be some mitigation on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So while getting to that, there was the issue of KEBS and counterfeit. I think one of the biggest challenges we have with KEBS is that the standards are there, but enforcement requires support from other agencies. So I think moving forward, we need to look for a way in which we can give KEBS the teeth to bite. So for example, if they discover there's an anomaly with a particular product, they need to go through interior, get officers, and so on. So I think the issue of enforcing so that the steel we produce or the cement is to the highest standard. And this will help us to instill trust and confidence with investors, because some of the key areas where we require government intervention is in standards. No single company can ensure the standard across the board, but government can do that, and KEBS is up to the job, but we need to review its mandate, especially with respect to enforcement. Then there is the issue of tax holidays asked by the Honorable Mishi. It is true that there are companies that come and do not strictly fit within our special economic zones or export processing zone, and I think some of these things can be looked on a case by case. But I think we also need to look at what would they otherwise be getting in other countries vis-a-vis what we are giving them, and ensure that at all times we are competitive. And I think one of the most important things is to learn how some of the major economies in the world operate. They have big companies, say if you talk of Korea and the Samsung, and the Samsung has over 500,000 employees, but has another over 200 companies that rely on it. These 200 are actually SMEs. So also if you're able to empower some of the mid-level, they will also come along with the small companies, and together we can move forward. And I think these are conversations we should have. And closely related to that, especially for foreign investment, is that there's always been an old debate. Even as you bring foreigners, you need to direct them which sectors to go, because you don't want a situation where they come and put a butchery and a hardware next to one run by locals. So I think within our investment policy, we also need to ensure that we don't just attract investment, we also direct it where it can be most beneficial and protect our local investments. Then,
Speaker, may I ask a question? Honorable Lee, one of the issues, you have talked about various strategies, but I've not heard you say anything about incentives to foreign investors, like giving them the land, giving them tax breaks. If you could just elaborate on that.
Through the chair, I think also in the trade, in the Ministry of Trade, we have
Members,
canvassed.
you are now just shooting questions without going through the chair. That's not our modus operandi, but go ahead, Mukami.
Yeah, what I wanted to tell the nominee, in the trade, in the Ministry of Trade, we have canvassed. Those are the ones who are supposed to guide whoever is coming to invest in this country. But I was also thinking in future, we may think about the foreign investors who are coming here in this country. They must we cooperate them with locals to avoid whatever they are earning in this country. You know, like Chinese.
We have a law on local content, don't we?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It's just enforcement.
Okay, you enforce that.
Yes. Mary, ask your question.
Thank you, Chairman.
One question.
No, Chair, I had not asked. Allow me, I'll not go to the preamble. I'll go straight, I have three. Chair, number one, we talked about dependency on imports, the substandard, the counterfeit, name them, that are impacting negatively on the local industries. My question is, we may even impose taxes to discourage importation of those substandard goods. We may even do whatever it takes. But what are you going to do as the minister if you nominee, you are approved to promote local content and encourage use of locally produced goods? Because if you do not change the mindset, then even if we do all that, that may be in vain. Secondly, with the high rate of unemployment, what programs for skills development are you going to support? Although I know that will cut across other sectors, education, the band, what have you. Because why are we producing graduates for opportunities that do not exist? If we do not need psychologists as a country, why are we continue to produce them? Why are we continue to produce accountants to come and stay at home for 10, 15 years unemployed from the time they graduated? I think that is also an area I feel you need to give us your thoughts as you take up the ministry if approved. And the last one is, you know, for Kenya to achieve significant industrialization by the year 2030, and you've already alluded to this, we need to address the challenges in the manufacturing sector. High cost of production, deficits in infrastructural, in infrastructure within the sector. And case among them is the sugarcane industry in the Western region. Those are some of the challenges that have been bedeviling that sector. So if we approve you, what are you going to do to address these challenges across? Thank you.
Last, Naisula.
Thank you, Chairman. Listening to the nominee, and even from his preamble, he seems to have thought about the challenges that are there that hinder manufacturing. You talked about high cost of electricity, taxation, and all. What are some, because when you speak here, we think tomorrow we're taking off if you get nominated and approved. What are some of the challenges that you foresee that might hinder all these good things that you've talked to us about here once you are nominated and appointed?
Can you answer those? Mishi, you have a question? I thought you have asked. Okay, go ahead. You are a joyrider to many questions.
No, thank you. You know that was somebody else's question, but I was just putting a rider on that.
So go ahead.
It was not my question. Yeah, thank you, Honorable Chairman. Honorable Chairman, I understand the nominee was once the governor of Nakuru County, and during that time you facilitated the setup of the Bahati Industrial Park, which focused on leather and textile industry. My question is, how will you replicate this model at a national level, particularly by promoting the growth of the leather industry in regions where we feel that we have potential for raw material sourcing? I'm looking in the area like the Ukambani and even Northeastern. My last question, you also successfully attracted investment in the Nakuru Special Economic Zone. We are having what we call Dongokundu Special Economic Zone, and it is been established in my constituency, that is Likoni constituency. This proposal has been there for the previous two regimes. To date, we are just hearing Dongokundu Special Economic Zone, but little has been achieved. What are your plans to ensure that we actualize this dream? And maybe, do you know the status of this project? Do you have the budget for this project, or it will just remain a promise or rather public relation? Thank you, Honorable Chairman.
Chair, can you answer one from the public? Just one.
Let him finish that first.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Allow me to start with the Honorable Ferdinand. And he had asked about our exports to the Middle East, and specifically beef and goat and the Bachuma Gate, where we really used to do, you hold the animals before you send them out. And maybe to make a special plea also to the nation, we are about 5 hours by air to the Middle East, and by sea maybe 10, 12 days. That is a region that has serious food deficiency. They can't grow food in the desert. However, they have a lot of money. They have a lot of resources. So Kenya is a natural source of food, including the beef. And I want to commend the MP for bringing that matter. So some of the issues that have been conversed previously, including hindrances to opening those markets, include diseases. So we send our beef, our goat, and all that, and when it gets there, we are told it has this problem. And the biggest challenge is that when a particular disease or traces of a disease are found, they will not say it is from exporter X or Y. They will say it is from Kenya. So Kenya is one source. So if we also don't clean our market, so that we say we need 500,000 goats every month, and that can keep all these pastoralist areas busy for the whole year. So I think we need a better communication so that people understand for what reason are we recommending. And then also for diseases, if I don't take care of my animals and you take care of yours, as soon as they interact, the same problem will come back. So I think we need an honest conversation, and unfortunately you have food coming from very far to the Middle East, and we are just next door. And our young people are living here to go and work there. as house girls and other jobs. Yet they can work at home, stay in the comfort of a family, and be able to earn a good living. So I think there is a bit of need to change those dynamics. The Honorable Ferdinand, I also wish to inform you that the President, together with the whole team from the ministry, is currently in the UAE for signing of a trade agreement. And these are some of the